All right, ladies, we're back for another episode of Scrunchy AM Podcast. My name is Becky.
I'm Katie.
And Kiah, welcome back.
Yeah.
What's the topic today, ladies?
What is it, Katie?
We are doing native plants to Florida, and we kind of have three categories we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about edibles, medicinals, and then pollinators. And then, of course, some of them kind of cross over into other areas. So that's our main topic.
So maybe we should start off by saying what zone we are in. We're in 9B, which I think has changed recently, right? Weren't we like 9A or 9C before?
You are correct.
Becky and I are almost 9A. We're like right on the border of 9A and 9B.
I think I'm B. I'm B.
Yeah. I think A is like just maybe a couple hundred miles above us. It's like pretty close.
Yeah, I think I wonder if, let's see here. You see me?
It can be cold in my area. It can get down to like 15 degrees on a good one.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so we're 9, zone 9.
Zone 9. So the plants we're going to talk about are like all inclusive to most of Florida. So because Florida's weather is typically humid and most of the year we have hot temperatures. So if you're listening in a similar climate where you have enough humidity that you feel like you just took a shower when you walk outside, then you're probably similar to Florida.
Steamed bag of crab legs in the summertime.
Right.
All right. Who wants to start?
Well, we're going to put them in categories for you guys. So this will be helpful. And as soon as we're done with this podcast today, we will send our Scrunchy BFFs a newsletter of a nice little list. Obviously, if you hear, you can get a pen and pencil, which would be good. Smart thing to do if you're listening to this now. But if you're not, we'll send you a list. So if you're not already part of our Scrunchy BFF newsletter, I would definitely recommend doing so today. So I guess, Katie, what are our categories?
We have the edibles, medicinals, and pollinators. So if you want, we can start with edibles.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah. So I have Beautyberry top of my list. So Kiah, do you want to tell us about the Beautyberry?
Ooh, okay. So I wanted to introduce a awesome book. So if you guys are seeing this, this is what the book looks like, but I will tell you what it is. So apparently Becky has the same book because it's awesome. It's Florida Gardener's Handbook. All you need to know how to plant, and maintain a Florida garden. And so in this book, they do actually have American Beautyberry in here. So I'm sure everybody that has lived in Florida has driven by like back roads or the side of the highway, and you've seen those. They're like a very fuchsia colored, like purple berry. And you would think that they were poisonous, but they actually aren't. So there's a lot that you can do with the actual berry itself. So, and they grow like literal weeds. Like we moved into the house that we're in right now, and the house came with them. And they're just shrubs, and most of the year they lie dormant. And then when they do bloom, you have these berries and they look really pretty. And what's nice is that when you harvest them, they'll turn that beautiful color of whatever you're making into that color. So if you're making like a jam, which is what we did last year, my husband harvested a ridiculous amount of American Beautyberry and made just jars and jars and jars of jam. So that's a good one to use it for. Anything that you guys have heard to use it for? I'm sure you can make tea. You can make tea out of anything.
And I read that you can use it as a natural dye. So I know a couple episodes ago, we talked about dyeing Easter eggs with natural coloring and, things like that. So I did see where you could use, the pulp maybe left over from making your jam. You could make that into a dye.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say, and then if you guys don't eat them, they're good for local birds too. So if you're just trying to encourage more plants that are going to bring in more local wildlife, that's a good one because a lot of birds like to eat them.
Yeah. And also obviously to eat, but if you want to, you can actually use it for a bouquet. You can put it in a bouquet. Like they use it. And you strip the bottom and you just leave the greenery and the fruit, and you can put it in a nice cool bouquet. There's a lady in, I think,
Farmer.
yeah, there's this lady in Tampa. Isn't she in Tampa? And she does a lot of weddings with a native Florida like bouquet. And so she uses American Beautyberry sometimes in the bouquet. It's pretty cool.
That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Using it as a natural dye would be really cool, though, because it has such a vibrant color.
Mm-hmm.
So, Katie, you had blueberries on your list too, right?
Yeah, and I actually didn't know that blueberry could be native to Florida. I think I've always just known that in our area we can go blueberry picking, but I didn't think that they were native to us. And then the one main thing that I have written down about blueberries is that they do have to be cross-pollinated. So if you do buy blueberry bushes, you have to get 2 different kinds or 2 of the same kind so that they can cross-pollinate. Otherwise, you're not going to have any fruit. And then everybody knows they're pollinated by butterflies and bees and other little pollinating bugs. So technically, blueberry is an edible and a pollinator-friendly plant.
I love that. So there's 2 kinds that are native to Florida. There's a rabbit eye, and then there's a southern high bush. It's so funny. So we took the boys out hiking at, where were we? Was it I think it was Blue Springs. And so we were walking down the trail, and all of a sudden we look at something and we're like, are those blueberries? We're like, there's no way. Thousands of them on the trail because they've been closed. So because of all the manatees out at Blue Springs, the springs have been closed for months. And so I guess nobody goes out there, or it's not as high trafficked as normal. So I've never been out there and seen so many blueberries. I didn't eat any personally because I was a little nervous. I didn't want to pick the wrong one and die, but I definitely need to take like a foraging class to identify which one's actually edible. But that would actually be really cool. We should totally, all 3 of us should take a foraging class. But so blueberries are everywhere. They're native. Birds love them. Deer love berries. I mean, if you're trying to encourage local wildlife. And what's really nice is that even if you don't do a native specific blueberry bush, they thrive in acidic, sandy soil. And guess what we have here in Florida? Sand. So much sand. And they will thrive.
You know, I'm part of a Facebook mom's foraging group. I never see it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I know. When I was homeschooling my daughter, I was in all the things, and that was one of the things. I don't know if it was a lady who dragged me in there. I don't know how I ended up in there, but yeah, they always tell you when they're going out to meet them. And I guess I've never done it, but I'm in the group. So I'll kind of tag you. So
yes, next time they meet up, we should all go.
Oh, we should all go. Yeah. That's
foraging.
Long style.
That's the next goal.
I have is cabbage palm, but it's also a sable palm. And those are those, I guess, technically palm trees, but then we all have those it seems like everybody in Florida has those short little palms in their front yard as decor.
Oh,
but apparently the heart of the sable palm is soft like a cabbage. Now, if you eat the heart of the palm, it's going to kill the plant. So they say don't do it, obviously. But if there's maybe a sable palm that you're going to pull out of the ground anyway, go ahead and use it. But they call it swamp cabbage because here in Florida, there's palm trees everywhere. And yeah, you can eat that. So that is something. And then when I was looking at the UF website, of course, they had different ways to use the plant. And they would use, the indigenous tribes of Florida would use that specific tree, the bark of it medicinally, and then for making shelter as well. So,
fun fact, I'm 30% indigenous Indian. I'm 30% indigenous Indian, Ecuadorian indigenous. I'm like, whoa, that's a big percentage. So every time I hear that word, I say it wrong, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm that.
I enjoyed reading about it. It was kind of cool that UF included all of that in the page that I was referencing, and how our indigenous tribes, we'll get there when we talk about Seminole pumpkins and stuff. But Yeah, so I had that. What else do you have, Kiah or Becky?
So I was going to point out the website. So UF is huge on promoting local gardening and talking about native plants. So they have a website. It's UF and it's IFAS extension. So it's an extension of University of Florida, and they have a whole section on like gardening. So I highly encourage you to go on their website. And there's a whole section on Florida's edible plants, and there's a whole list of things not to eat on there. So if you are going out and don't pick certain things. So actually, that leads me to one. So everybody's heard of elderberry, right? So if you go down the aisle at like Whole Foods, or if you're going to look at like children's medication section, you'll see Symbicus or whatever it's called. And it's elderberry syrup. So who knew where it came from? It comes from a bush, like most things. And it's a very hardy shrub. And it has these really pretty little white flowers. We actually have 2 growing right now. And you see the wasps and the bees all over them. I don't know if they're meant to be pollinators, but they're thriving all over them. And they grow so quickly. So you have this huge shrub that almost creates like a small tree. And then when they go and bloom, they have these little pretty white flowers. The flowers themselves are not edible. The leaves are not edible. And the berries, when they're raw, are not edible. But when you harvest them, you cook down the berries, and it has been used for generations for everything. So it is the all go-to remedy for your common cold, congestion, for literally everything. You can use it on like an everyday basis, like a multivitamin pretty much, which is what we use here. We haven't gotten any berries yet. So fingers crossed, maybe at the end of summer we'll have some. Yeah. But I've seen some recipes. Actually, one of my girlfriends used to make homemade elderberry syrup, and it's so easy. You get the berries, you add honey, you can add clove. She used to add a little bit of cinnamon, and that's it. And then you jar it up and you store it in the refrigerator, and it's good for a long time. You can store it in the freezer and then just pop them out when you need them. Take a tablespoon every single day. And then if you need it, I know Medicinals on another one. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent, but
no, that's good. It's good. I have elderberry soap in my refrigerator right now.
Yeah. So. I have a disclaimer for elderberry though, because when I was about it for this episode, it is contraindicated in autoimmune diseases because it's an immune booster, and it's going to help normal people like, oh, we're going to feel better. I'm going to get over this cold. But autoimmune people, their immune system is working in overdrive and it's attacking their body. So people with autoimmune diseases should stay away from it, because then it could put you into a flare up of whatever your autoimmune disease is. So that's just a little FYI. I had no idea that was a thing. So figured I would with the elderberry topic.
No, that's really good, because a lot of people who have that. And so for me, I didn't even I bought my cuttings from a person on Etsy. That's how I grew my elderberry. But I mean, usually I have about 5 shrubs right now, and they are producing like crazy. So I even have some from last year in the freezer, and I'm like, oh, I need to use these, because I'm like, I'll frozen for a year, whatever. It's like, I mean, usually you should wait at least 6-7 months, but years cutting it close. So if you're freezing it, preserving it, use it within a year. Don't be me. That's a good one. Elderberry is amazing.
Yeah, the next edible that I have is one that I actually have at my house, and it's muscadine grapes. You guys have seen my giant grapevine at my house. It's probably 8 feet tall. It's on this massive trellis. It was here when we bought the home, but it has grown exponentially in the past 4 years. So muscadine, or they also call it scuppernog. It depends on where you're from, I guess. But they are actually very pest and disease repellent and tolerant. So they're very minimal. You do not have to fertilize them or do anything. They thrive in high acidity, sandy soil, which is exactly what we have here. The base of my grapevine is this big around. It is massive. So, and I do nothing to it. So there's 3 different varieties. There's a male and a female, and then there's a self-pollinating or self-fertile variety, and that's what I have. So my grapevine doesn't even produce flowers that need to be pollinated. It just puts out grapes. And I have hundreds of grapes right now. So that's the one that thrives amazingly here in Florida. You can do jams, you can do wine. Muscadine wine is something we're known for. So that is one I'm so excited about. Since I just got into all my preserving and canning and stuff, I'm definitely doing muscadine something very soon. So I'll give a follow up on that when we get there.
And I feel like it's kind of like a multi plant because you can use the leaves.
Right? Yes, you put them in pickles, you're canning pickles, and it makes them crispy and they stay better, whatever, chemical is in there.
Or that Greek, what is it called?
Dolmades.
Yeah.
Yes, that's perfect.
So for our listeners, if you don't know what a dolmades is, so it's rice wrapped in a grape leaf. And oh my gosh.
Heavenly. One of my favorite things.
Next one.
So, okay, so here's a good one. Florida avocado.
Yum.
So we're all familiar with going to the grocery store and getting Hass avocados. And they're maybe the size of your palm. Florida avocados are like the size of your face. They're gigantic and they taste different. So Hass avocados have like a sweet taste to them. Florida avocados are definitely more meaty. But I mean, first of all, they're native. So you'll have avocados for the rest of your life. And you harvest them just like you would a regular Hass avocado, but you get something that's like 3 times as large. The difference is a Hass avocado is going to have like that bumpy exterior. And then when it's ripe, it's going to turn brown. And a Florida avocado is going to have like a smooth green look to it, but it's going to get soft, just like a normal ripe avocado. But that one's a really good one. I mean, the trees get to be huge. So if you're trying your own food forest, it's definitely a shader.
We're going to learn about that more at the permaculture convergence, like working on your canopy, the upper trees that are going to provide shade for your lower little like bush plants that can't tolerate Florida sun. Because we all know when they say full sun, it doesn't mean full Florida sun. We still need a little bit of shade or else everything's going to burn.
100%. 100%.
Mm-hmm. And then our next favorite one, I wrote Yupon holly. So do you want to? I love Yupon holly.
Yes. Okay. So we talked about it in one of our other episodes. Here, let me find my little notes on Yupon holly. So
local tea company.
Yes. So there is a local tea company. I think they're out of New Smyrna or that neck of the woods. But Yupon holly, it's kind of like a shrub and it's very hardy. So you can use it in our zone all the way to zone 7A. So it's hardy in most areas. So it's not technically edible, but you can create tea out of it. So you can't really eat it, but because it is like a shrub, but it does have high levels of caffeine. So you can use it as a coffee alternate, but it's been used for generations here. And it's something that most people, driving by the side of the road would never think that it is what it is. We have one in our front yard. I think we bought it at the Lou Gardens plant sale that they had this past year, which if you guys are listening to this podcast and you are local, Lou Gardens has an annual plant sale and they have a whole native plant section, which is awesome. So they have a whole section just for local pollinators. And then they have shrubs and flowering plants and all kinds of native stuff. Just a side note. But that's where we got our Yupon holly from. So it looks like a mini tree, essentially. But it's awesome. And hopefully we'll be able to harvest them and make some tea soon.
Yeah, and you mentioned like how long it's been around. I did, of course, on my website. Yupon holly has been used in indigenous tribes for ceremonial and medicinal ceremonies. But we also here in America resulted to the Yupon holly tea during the American Revolution and the Civil War when we weren't importing teas from India. So there's a little fun fact.
Love
I
that.
love that.
Yeah. Becky.
All right. Yeah. And I was looking up some things. And persimmons, that fruit bearing, tastes like an apricot. Chooses like just a sunny spot, and you will need, a sandy soil, as we know we are just full of that. So I think that works well, just like the other ones we were talking about. And so I know some people have those in their yards, and they might not even know that they have them, but
So
that's one of
there's
them.
two.
And then
There's a Florida persimmon, and apparently we don't see them in store because they get very delicate and very soft when they're ripe, so they don't ship well. And then when they're underripe, they're like bitter and they're actually not really good to eat. So if you do have your own Florida persimmon, you have like something special that you can't get anywhere else because we don't ship them, export them anywhere.
yeah, that's a good thing to know. Another thing I found was wild coffee, the shrub that grows in, of course, the warmer months, but it's always warm here. So what months is that? Every month. So, but I was like, when I read that, I was like, okay, but it's cool. It's like little berries. They're really pretty. They have pretty white flowers too, just like the elderberry, how it starts off. But the wild coffee, they can be roasted, just like for your morning coffee, but they contain, it's so crazy, 0 caffeine.
Oh.
Yeah, but they're called wild coffee. It's just, yeah, so it's so crazy. It's used for full shade, and the berries come out in the summer. And although as a native, this plant definitely benefits the soil. So you can have it to better your soil, because all these plants are actually, I feel like, well, even if you're not eating them, it's good to plant them because they're just good for the soil and to make that stronger. And you can chop and drop these things as well. And that's a term that, if you don't know what chop and drop is, you chop it and you leave it on the floor and it just becomes earth. And so that just makes your soil stronger. So be mindful, because even if you don't want to eat them, you can always have them, obviously for pollinators, but also to strengthen in your soil. So it's always good.
Yeah. Okay, so I was having some technical issues with my headphones. Did you mention mulberry?
No, we didn't.
Okay, so red mulberry, apparently that's a local fruit that requires like 0 maintenance, 0 irrigation, 0 fertilizing. And if nobody knows what a mulberry looks like, it kind of looks like a long blackberry, but it's red. And
yes, I've seen that.
apparently the Iroquois, the Cherokee, and the Timucuan, and the Seminole tribes used to even use the tree's wood.
So it must be like a stronger, wood tree to make things out of than like the soft, like oak trees and stuff. That's really cool. And like, I feel like we have a couple plants that are in that realm too, like Seminole pumpkin. I think from what I read was named after like the Seminole tribe here in Florida. It's like the creeping vine, and it does really well in the heat. I know Becky gifted me, I think you did too, Kiah, gifted me some Seminole pumpkins last year, and the seeds like take off here. They love to burrow in that sandy soil, but apparently originally they were found around historical indigenous campsites. So now, so they knew the good stuff, and then it just like naturally grows. So you can just have wild pumpkins, especially if you like throw one out in your pasture, it'll come back the next season and start growing again. So that's
you have like 50 of them.
Yeah. And speaking of a book that you, aside from what Kiah said, the Seminole pumpkin is in that Transforming Florida Yards book. And so, yes, it's in there too. So definitely get your hands on that too. Shout out to Amanda Pike.
Yeah.
We'll put that in. Yeah. We'll put that in our newsletter, all those books that we are talking about, but definitely all of these things that we're talking about is in her book. She has, I think, 200, is it? In 200 edible plants that you can grow in Florida. Yeah. Seminole pumpkin's in there. And so for sure, it's one of those where you can live off of. Sure.
Wow. So how about pecan trees? Do you guys see pecan or pecan?
I think
I'm team pecan.
I don't know. I think it's a pecan.
I think it says pecan because we've talked about it before.
I say a lot of things wrong, so I probably say it wrong.
I think it's just like you're on one camp or the other. I'm on the pecan camp.
So they are native to Florida. Apparently, Native Americans use them as a food source for thousands of years. And they can be found anywhere from the tip of Miami all the way up to the Panhandle in Pensacola. And they also add some shade to your undercrops as well. That's a weird word, undercrop.
Yeah.
I'm going to shade my undercrop.
Oh my God.
You guys are hilarious.
That should not be as funny as it was.
I'm laughing because you're laughing so hard.
Okay, all right. Let's get it together.
Get it together, guys.
All right, so moving on.
Let us know if anybody gets that. If you're laughing too, let us know. If not, then we're just all weird.
Okay, so first medicinal I wanted to mention was
Oh yes, we're moving on to medicinal.
Yes, this is big out in like East Orlando. And it took me, like, I've noticed it through the years and it took me a while to figure out what was going on. So the saw palmetto, have you guys heard of this? It produces berries that are in some circles known to treat prostate cancer and different cancers. This went crazy in the, crunchy stratosphere to the point where a permit is now required to pick these berries so that we can preserve and protect these native plants. So you actually, for the Florida Department of Agriculture, even if it's on private property, your own property, you have to have a permit to pick these saw palmetto berries. And if you're driving out in East Orlando down like Highway 50, 520, you can see people in the bushes with these big buckets, like picking these berries. So this is a thing that went crazy in the scrunchy stratosphere. So super interesting. I don't know if there's any studies that prove that it helps with cancer, but there's some kind of antioxidant that says it fights cancer, which I thought was really cool.
Wow, it's a good fact. I'm sure no one knew that. I didn't. What other medicinal? Echinacea.
Yes.
Pretty cornflower. Oh, is it corn? Yeah.
Coneflower.
Coneflower. I feel like I've tried to grow that, and I think it depends on the variety because there's so many of them. And so I feel like you have to find the one that is a native here in Florida, because then a lot of flower farmers, if they do grow that, they grow it as an annual. But I never, even when I see it, I'm like, is it? Because in my mind, it's like an annual. It just dies, But I feel like you have to have the specific. I think it's a color. I think it's like a purple color of the native plant that you'll probably see, which I haven't seen it out, like, unless you've seen it, Kiah. You've probably gone hiking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seen it at all when you guys go hiking at all? Have you seen it?
We have. Yeah. Okay. So this one says, the leaves of the local ones are lavender, or the petals, excuse me. The petals are lavender color. They bloom in the spring to fall, and they're drought tolerant, and they like partial shade. And it says zones 8 to 10. So I was gonna see if it showed the actual variety name. Okay, Echinacea purpurea. Purpurea is the name that's local here.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's, if anything, those types of flowers, they can be used in so many different ways. I mean, it's powerful. And I don't think people understand how powerful they are. You just see it's like, oh, so pretty. And then you walk away.
And butterflies love them too. So if you have a butterfly garden or you want to help local butterfly pollinators, that's a good one to plant.
Yes. What is another one that we should mention? Medicinal, but that's like native.
She's like, I've got it all.
Just say it, Katie. What are they?
So one that kind of goes with that is, I have a whole list. So let's start with valerian root. that's native to Florida. That's, of course, in so many different teas, even like on the shelf, if you read the actual tea that's in it. Valerian root is for like calming, sleep, stress, and anxiety. Also pollinator friendly. I wrote that bees, butterflies, of course, all of that. Hummingbirds like these plants. So that's another one, valerian root.
That's a good one. I
Yeah.
think when it comes to like medicinal, sometimes it's like the flowers. Like there's a lot of flower ones. Like they're flowers, but they're also powerful. So I mean, I can think of them, but they're not native. But yes.
Yeah. I have one that's not a flower, and I actually have this that grows wild at my house. This is prickly pear cactus.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like the elderberry. All parts are edible after preparation. I would have to do more diving into like what preparation actually means, like cooking it or what that means. But the folklore applications for this were to treat lung and kidney diseases as well as urinary disorders. So it can also coat the GI tract, similar to like marshmallow plant. It would coat the GI tract to help with like indigestion and arthritis.
That's sick.
Yeah.
So I know that this is not really a plant, but we're talking about native to Florida. What about native honey? Like from native bees, right? Because yes, you can go to the grocery store and you can get honey, and it could be organic honey, but it's imported from X, Y, and Z country somewhere or another state. But using something that's local, the reason it's so important is because it's medicinal. So the local bees that are here are they're going to be around, no pun. They're going to be and pollinate all of the local plants, which are maybe the cause of seasonal allergies. And so all of the pollen that they have, and then all that honey that they create is liquid gold, literally. And it's, from, Umatilla, which is like the bee capital of Florida, or America.
Pollen basically, and your body is able to build up an immunity to those natural, like I don't get allergies, and I don't know if maybe that's why, because I do a local honey in my area. Who knows, but I don't suffer from allergies anymore. So I'm sold by it for sure.
Well, and there's that black honey that's sold near you too, right?
Yes, it's called
Black
swamp honey, and it's actually whatever the bees are pollinating with. They have a hive out in the swamp, and it comes back like almost black, and it is so like the most strong honey taste. It almost tastes like artificial honey, like honey flavoring that they would put in something. It is so strong. It's amazing. And there's actually another type of honey that you can only get in North Carolina certain times of the year, because the bees, I want to say it's the kudzu flower. It's like purple, but they make purple honey. And my mom has some. She's like savoring it, but it almost tastes like orange blossom honey. It's so floral and it's so pretty, and it's this beautiful like blue purpley color. But again, it's only there because that's where the bees are specifically pollinating with those kudzu flowers.
You know a business that sells that, or is it?
No, I think some people just, again, and it's only certain times of the year, if that year at all. Like it's very hard to find because it may only be like every other year. And I think it's just very small, mom and pop type places. So, but if I find one, I'll put it in the newsletter.
That would be great.
Yeah.
All right, what's next? Or should we move on?
I wrote also witch hazel is, which I had no idea. And we all know that's an astringent for burns, abrasions, also like an antiseptic. People use it for skincare, but you can use it for like teething babies too, all types of stuff. And I didn't know that was native to Florida or thrived in Florida. So,
yeah. Also for women who give birth.
Mm-hmm.
They use that. And actually, I was going to buy that actually at Walmart. I was like, where do I find that? Because I want to make a bug spray with witch hazel and the leaves of American Beautyberry.
Oh,
So that's actual, like a natural bug spray. So you just kind of let the leaves soak in there. And then, people use that with alcohol, but I don't want to spray alcohol like on my skin to dry it out. So another alternative is witch hazel.
Let us know. I'd be really interested in making some of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess you could put like essential oils if you want, why not? Essential-
Yeah.
Or something, because I heard that's naturally keeps bugs away, that eucalyptus
Yeah.
smell.
Yes. And there's one with a C. I forgot what it's called. It's a essential oil. Can't pronounce it, but
Petronella?
is
Is
it?
that? Well, I don't
It's
know.
like it's like a long word, like with a C. I'm like, oh, okay. So, but
Did you say
at, like,
citronella?
is it? Maybe you're right, because a lot of the bug sprays, like the natural ones, have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then
citronella.
lemongrass.
I know those.
Yeah.
I have those.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's another thing. I feel like that's a good way to be multi-use, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other ones?
I have two left. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Is it mullein? Mullein? Mullein.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
One of my like native plant pages where they're always making like little concoctions. And I've seen this one talked about a lot because I think maybe they're harvesting it right now. But that's a go-to remedy for respiratory illnesses like common colds, all that gunk and congestion. Apparently it's supposed to get rid of it. I did want to read more about how you do it. Are you supposed to just brew it like a tea and like breathe it in, or if you're actually ingesting it? So that's something I wanted to look at for sure.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah. So if anybody knows, leave us a comment and let me know. I'll do my own research. And then my last one is a hot button topic right now. Ashwagandha is native to India. I have no idea, but it's very big in Ayurvedic medicine. It's got like adaptogenic properties, anti-inflammatory, immune modulating, helping your body manage stress. I feel like this has been all over the internet recently, is taking ashwagandha instead of using like pharmaceuticals for stress and anxiety relief.
So what is that plant? Is it a mushroom?
I don't know, to be honest. I didn't look up the picture.
All right, Becky. Becky's on it. Oh, we can't hear you, Becky. No, can't hear you, Becky. Are you muted?
I can do a quick Google search.
So I feel like it sounds like it might be a mushroom.
I was multitasking at my paid job today. So it actually, yeah, looks like it's a like bush, and the ashwagandha are like little pods almost. And you would take off the little pod and like make it into a powder, or there's the actual root part. So I think you can use all different parts of the plant.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there's that. But I'm really excited about growing like a possible like medicinal garden. So I had a lot of fun researching for this episode. I was all about it.
Yes. And there's so many medicinal plants that thrive in Florida that may not be native necessarily, but there's like a whole list. And we can have that on a separate podcast. Actually, that would be a really good episode, just medicinal plant. I think that would be a good one. Do we want to move on to pollinators?
Sure.
So a good local pollinator, my handy dandy book. So bee balm. So there are these cute little red flowers, and they have their hardiness in zone 8 and 9. So I didn't know that they came in different colors. I thought they were just red, but they have red, white, pink, and pastel colors. And they prefer moist soil, easy to grow in well-drained soil.
Nice.
Yeah, they're really pretty. I mean, anything to encourage local bees, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we still can't hear you, Becky. Oh no. Technical.
Okay, I'll say another one too. So the cone flower, echinacea, that is a pollinator as well. And I know we were talking about the different colors that are available. There's all different colors, but I think the one native to Florida was purple. And salvia, yeah, let me see if I can find a picture of that one for anybody who's watching this. Salvia comes in a bunch of different colors.
I've seen them purple, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm like making sure I'm thinking of the right one.
Here, I'll tell you. Okay, page 26. See, everybody needs this book.
Already convinced me.
Can you see the picture?
Yeah, those are pretty.
Okay, so salvia are pollinators, and they come in bright red, salmon, pink, and purple. So I think that's a variety. And then there was another one in here too. It's so funny. The botanist name I am not familiar with.
I'm not begin to try and do those.
I know. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's the same thing. So hardiness, zones 8 to 10. It's a perennial, so it's something that's going to come back every year. In Central Florida, you want to cover, or Central or North Florida, you want to cover during cold weather because it definitely likes the warm. But I mean, it's pretty hardy here. I think the only thing that you have to worry about are caterpillars. Oh, and slugs. Did you guys ever hear that beer thing that you can do for slugs? So if you're in your garden and you notice there's slugs everywhere, slugs are drunks and they like to drink beer. But you can literally get just a cheap beer and then like a bowl or like a cup, and you put the beer in it and then you put it out in your garden, and like literally the next morning all of the slugs will be in the cup drinking the beer, and it doesn't kill them. They're just in there, drunk and doing their sluggy thing, and then you take that cup and then you just put them in your neighbor's garden or far, far away. Yes, give them to your chickens, but I'd be careful because they might get drunk. I don't know. I don't know how they would do with beer.
A couple other pollinators that I have is the jasmine. So I have bees buzzing around my jasmine vine like crazy. And I've often heard the jasmine called, I don't like to call it this, but it's also called like Confederate jasmine because I think it's here in like the South area. I don't know if that's why it's called that, but I do have the regular jasmine plant. I have a couple of them, and there's always bees buzzing around the flowers, butterflies all over them. So those are amazing. I planted those at the edge of my garden to make like a natural kind of fence around it, and it is taking off. It loves sandy soil.
Yeah. So the Confederate one has those little white flowers, right? That like in a pinwheel looking thing. I think that's what we have. I think that's what we have along our fence. And it's like super fragrant too.
So strong. We have actually, I think I told you guys about this tree that I have in my yard. Massive tree, like the size of a giant oak tree. And it's got these big purple flowers on it, and it smells just like jasmine. And I don't know what it's called, but when you're standing close to this tree, when it's fully blooming, you hear just the loudest buzzing. The whole tree is covered in bees. It's just like this loud hum. And it's cool because I thought at first that it was my jasmine that smelled that way, and it's not. It's actually that tree. I'll have to like figure out what it is for sure, but
so do the flowers look like passion flowers? Like, have you ever seen like a passion flower from a passion fruit vine?
Right. They don't have like the little furry things on the inside that the passion vine does. But I thought it was like a Japanese something, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it's native to here, but it is a massive tree and it smells just like jasmine, but amazing for pollinators. So I plan on planting my citrus trees next to that since it's already like a major hub for the pollinators.
Yes, a little pollinator hub. A little watering hole for them. The last one I have is wild petunia. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Oh, these are pretty.
Oops. Is that the one?
Yes. Okay, let me see if I can put this up here. Little
petunia on my arm.
Yes.
I didn't know that was local.
So they're native and they're pollinators for butterflies. The colors are blue and lavender. So it may freeze in the cold, crisp 2 days that we get, but they grow back. And they're drought tolerant, which is awesome because everybody knows Florida,
And you mentioned passion fruit. So there's passion flower and there's passion fruit. I wrote down passion flower. So they technically are edible, but they like don't taste great. They're not the same as passion fruit at all. But those are major for hummingbirds. So that's something that I really want to start attracting more to my yard is hummingbirds. So that is one of the main ones that they love is passion flower. And apparently it even can get a little bit invasive. So it's very easy to grow. So that's the next one I want to get.
Are those native to Florida?
They're like,
Oh, that's
they look kind of like the passion fruit flowers, very similar.
But they don't ever fruit.
I think so. Yeah, they're just the flowers, just for pollinators. I don't think I would be able to tell them apart, like at a first glance. But yeah, so I want to get that one too.
Yeah. Well, I think we've touched on all three of our topics, did we? It was edible and medicinals and pollinators. So what'd you say? We lost Becky. Oh, she's still there. Well, we can wrap it up. And if you guys have any questions, Becky mentioned we're going to put some of our information and the books that we mentioned in our newsletter. And we're curious to know if any of you guys have any of these local plants in your own food forest or in your own local landscape. The one thing that's awesome about planting native is that it almost turns into a zero, what is it called? A zero, like labor. Yeah, zero labor, right? Because it's used to our climate and it's used to like the temperatures and everything. So at some point, you're not even going to have to take care of them. So it's more sustainable too to plant native crops. And it's better for the environment because you're supporting your local ecosystem. So even if it's not pollinators, if you're planting certain plants that your local ecosystem thrives on, down to squirrels and deers and bugs and worms, things under the soil that are used to certain crops and certain plants that may have gone away because of building and putting in streets and neighborhoods. And maybe there's plants that used to be here that aren't here anymore. So you can kind of do your part and plant one or two native plants in your garden and bring back that natural ecosystem that used to be here a couple hundred years ago.
And I read that because of restoration projects like this, especially at like Blue Springs, we're actually getting more of those like lightning bugs back. I remember seeing lightning bugs everywhere as a kid, and I haven't seen them in a long time. But apparently we're doing a lot of restoration at like Blue Springs and our local state parks that are doing that same thing just to bring back, native wildlife. But my suggestion was also going to be take a walk around your yard, take your iPhone, take pictures of things and look up what it is, because I discovered that I was like, what is this cactus? And I took a picture of it and it's prickly pear cactus. And I was so blown away. So I feel like we have these things in our yards that we don't even notice. Or like if you're, taking a walk and you're walking around your neighborhood, like just take pictures, see what local wildlife is out there and really educate yourself on it. Cause I was very pleasantly surprised at just like the cool stuff I have around my yard already.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's so true. So there was some type of a lily that is growing in the back of our yard, and it is native here. I don't remember what the name of it was. I didn't look it up. But yeah, there's so many plants that there's so many ferns and so many shrubs. And it's so funny because you go to like nurseries and like landscaping places, and most of that stuff is growing naturally in your yard. You'd be surprised if you stopped mowing your yard. I mean, if you have an HOA, you can't, but a lot of people, a lot of people are going into those, they're called like meadow yards, and not mowing and just seeing the beautiful wildflowers that come out. And by the way, dandelions have such a bad rap because most weeds, quote unquote, were labeled weeds. A lot of them actually have medicinal properties to them, and they're good for local pollinators, and they're good for the local ecosystem. And so, killing off those weeds most of them are beautiful too. We have probably a handful of weeds that we're letting just go wild in our front yard. And they're the cutest little flowers. And they look like little mini daisies and like little mini sunflowers. And I'm like, this is stuff we would be missing out on if we manicured our yard.
Yeah, and dandelion jam is a thing too. I've seen, I think it was maybe in April, people were harvesting it, the yellow dandelion flowers, and you can make dandelion jam. So that's another just little tidbit. I'm just obsessed with jams and, preserving stuff right now. So
Katie's going to have a 101, canning 101, preserving 101. You can teach us all.
I would love to. I just made pickled okra and I'm like on cloud nine about that today. But yes, so future episode, we'll do some canning and preserving. Like, what do you do next after you've made this food for us and you have all this produce and all this stuff from your garden? What do you do with it? So way future episode. Definitely do that.
Yes. All right. Well, we are signing out. This is Becky and Kiah.
Katie, thank you again, everybody. I'm so glad we're having, more listeners. It seems like every week that we put out a new video, we get more and more listeners. And I'm just like, I'm so excited about this episode. So I'm glad we could do that one today.
And leave a comment.
Bye, Becky.